Welcome to the Power Hour, Optometry's biggest and longest running show. We're more than halfway through our season. I'm your host, Eugene Shatsman, and today's episode is one that you really want to listen into if myopia management is something that you care about in your practice. Listen, if you ever thought about offering myopia management, if you're dabbling in it and it's just not quite clicking, or if you're doing well but you just want to do better, these are the two people you want to listen to. I brought together two absolute powerhouse doctors, Dr. Brianna Rhue and Dr. Thanh Mai. Together, they're managing thousands, or their practices are managing thousands of myopia cases, kids in treatment across multiple locations, and they've helped guide countless other practices through it. But listen, when it comes to this particular episode, we're not just talking theory, we're talking about what actually works. What's actually happening in the practice? What's the mindset that you have to have in order to be really good at myopia management? What percentage of your patients could potentially qualify for cash-based myopia treatment? And what you should charge, how to make that number feel like a no-brainer? How often should you see those patients? What are the treatment modalities? And what is an acceptable close rate? Is it 5%, like some practices, for every time I talk about treatment, 5% of patients, or is it 98%, like you might hear on this show? How does it work? We break it all down, from pricing models that scale, to scripts and silences that convert, to processes, how to reframe the entire exam room conversation, outcomes instead of options. And look, Bri and Tan do not necessarily agree on everything, but this episode turns into this really complete list of wish I'd known that are like, wow, that is exactly how I do it, or that might really work for my practice. So whether you're looking to grow your myopia program, struggling to get patients to say yes, or just looking to unlock a new level of clinical and financial impact for your practice, this episode is for you. Before we dive in, two quick things. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, so you don't miss future episode drops. And by the way, if you've got episode ideas, questions, or if you want to continue this type of panel discussion on anything that you hear today, head to eugeneshatsman.com, drop me a note. I absolutely respond to every single note. Now, let's get into it. Here's today's Power Hour. Okay, Dr. Brianna Rhue, Dr. Thanh Mai, welcome to the Power Hour. Excited to have you both on this amazing panel.
Excited to be here. Let's go.
All right. Thanks for having me. This is my fourth time on the Power Hour, and I'm just super excited to be back.
Let's do it. So here's the deal. I think the best place to start is to just give the listeners a little bit of context about each of your practices, because they are a little bit different. And while we're going to zoom in on myopia, I think it gives everybody a chance to think a little bit about what kind of practice you're starting with and how you landed there. So, Brianna, I'm going to have you go first. Just describe your practice, roughly how many patients you guys see, how many pediatric patients you see, and then also how many kids you have in your myopia program at this exact moment in time.
Yeah. So private practice, Fort Lauderdale, we've got 3.5 lanes. So meaning that half lane, we can't really refract in there. So it's an overflow room. 2 doctors running, but I have 2 associates and myself. So I see patients day and a half a week, Tuesday, half day, Wednesday morning, do doctor contact lens the other 90 days a week. And then really primary care practice, we do obviously heavy in myopia management. We are part of 2 studies. One just finished, which was a Signexus study. We're also enrolling in the CooperVision study. See about 30 to 35 patients a day. Would I want that to be more? Of course. We're just bottlenecked at our pretest area. So we're just busting at the seams at our practice. And honestly, it comes down to parking, which is why we can't see more patients. Then we do, and we'll get into this in the episode, but like my Tuesdays from 2 to 4, only allowed for myopia management practice. So we've got about 650 kids, 700 kids now in some form of a treatment. And we'll get later into just 2 cases I saw on Tuesday and why I do what I do.
That's amazing. Okay, great. So 650 to 700 kids in some form of myopia management program.
Yep.
Got it. All right. Tan, over to you. Talk a little bit about your locations.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me, first of all, Eugene. A little bit about me. I actually own 4 locations in Southern California in Orange County. 1 I opened cold 10 years ago, and 3 acquisitions. So I'm kind of just in mergers and acquisition mode now. besides owning the practices, I also work at Treehouse Eyes. Our job is to go around the country. We have got about 70 locations, and my job is to train the doctors how to install a myopia management program within their office. I also run the myopia protocol at Vision Source and teach at SCCO. And so a little bit about our practice. Well, I'll talk mostly about the first one because that's my baby. That's my cold start. I don't do a lot of primary care there. Probably sell like one pair of glasses a day. We've got 5 doctors working, but I've got 12 doctors total, but 5 at that practice. And we've done easily over 1,000 myopia cases. I don't know the exact number, but it's a big part of what we do besides special contact lenses like scleral lenses and vision therapy. And so I've kind of, just like Brianna, heard every objection, sales objection, every, what is this? Why does it work? I've heard every, thing from other optometrists as well, because I speak and lecture, and I run into, Brianna and I both run into ODs that just, some get it and I'll dial it in, and some need to get it and need to get their butt kicked. And so a little bit of both. And so on the business side and also to the consumer side, I'm kind of dabbling in both.
Yeah, so this is great. And I think this gives the audience a lot of context for where the two of you are coming from. Let me just ask, how has the field of myopia management really evolved in Europe? And like, you think about it from your perspectives, you each eat, live, breathe this every single day. There are some providers who, this is a pretty solid adjacency for them, meaning like they'll do it, but maybe once a month or not at all type of thing. So that the field, but I think the awareness, and when I'm asking the question, I wonder if from your perspectives, the awareness on the provider side has increased substantially over the last 5 years. And then on the other side, has the awareness from the patient side increased substantially? Tan, I'll go to you first.
Yeah, we have but one problem with myopia. We don't have a treatment problem. We don't need to invent new science. We have a messaging problem, a process problem, and a reframing the story problem. And that's mostly, in my opinion, it'll be almost an impossible nut to crack to find that message and to get the public awareness out. So I think the main avenue in which I've been trying to raise myopia across the country is to get the ECP to finally start doing it. I think 10 years ago, very few doctors were doing it. There's the niche, the small groups, the early innovators and early adopters were doing it, the 5 to 10%. Today, luckily in 2025, I'd say the vast majority, probably at least over 80%, at least know about it, know it exists, don't think it's voodoo science. Their problem is more of a process and implementation, execution, clinical confidence, staff training, don't have the prices set, the contracts written, and how to do the messaging in the exam room problem. That's the biggest nut to crack, in my opinion. We're trying to solve that, but it's a hurdle. And I'd say it's gotten, though, exponentially better, where now people know it exists, where 10 years ago, the doctors did not. But now the doctors know it exists. They just have a hard time implementing it. From the patient public awareness side, I still don't think the needle has barely moved, I think. Probably only 3% actually get the message.
Okay. And what's interesting is, Tan, I have some data about that patient awareness side. Bree, over to you first, and then I'll try to add my thoughts.
Yeah, can we just clock that answer? Clock it, Tan. I just learned from one of my Gen Zer employees. So he's standing on his business right there, Tan, 10 toes down. So what I see it as is parents are now seeking this out. And the case I just had on Tuesday, guys, this isn't, Tan, I think you're exactly right. You can't open a journal without reading something on myopia. You can't go to a conference without doing something on myopia or see someone talking on it. It really is a belief system that we have to overcome, and that the no objections, right? So as ODs, realize, yes, you are providing a solution, call it sales, call it a solution. It really just comes down to presenting it. Some things now, we have these amazing calculators like Optometry and all these other things now that really get your talk track straight. And it comes to just a belief, knowing what you're doing is right for that kid, and understanding it's not up to you to decide if it's right or not for the kid. It's up to the parent to decide. It's up to you now to present the option. Meaning, on Tuesday, where I'm fired up right now, is this the case? 14-year-old, -14, -3 still in both eyes, was seeing a pediatric ophthalmologist in my area and was told she was not a contact lens candidate. Like, are you kidding me? Of course she's a freaking contact lens candidate, okay? And now had been in this pediatric ophthalmologist since she was 3 years old, was never told there was anything that he could do or that she could do, the mom could do. She went to another optometrist who said, do not pass go see Dr. Rhue. There in my chair, the whole 20-minute consultation and exam was me dealing with a mom absolutely livid that no one had talked to her about this before. Livid. I mean, couldn't stop saying, like, over there, just shaking her head, almost in tears, like it almost like just pulled at my heartstrings. Like, I'm apologizing on behalf of my profession. I don't know. Number why, what no one told her that she could do contacts. I found, like, I just put what I could, the highest that I had, and her face just lit up, and it was like not even close to her prescription. You guys know what fit sets we have, so imagine what I put on her, right? And I'm never going to throw somebody under the bus, but I had to sit there and apologize. Yes, we just got treatments in 2020, but she would have been 8 in 2020 or 9. She was probably a -6 at that time. That's, again, guys, like, this isn't rocket science, man. It's just not rocket science at this point. So I think when you take away this, that's what Ton and I are going to hear us over and over again with this passion in these cases. If you don't want to do it, don't. If you're jamming dry eye, glaucoma, like, find someone to refer to, man, but you can't do this anymore like this. It's not fair. It's not fair to the parent. It's not fair to the patient. And it's not fair to your profession.
Yeah, so I love the passion, and both of you have it, and I that's why I really wanted to put this panel together. I mean, let me just say this: this is really the consumer data that seems to be that seems to be evolving. Is that when you look at the total volume of searches, and this is, you know, an indicator of demand, right? It's not the only point of demand, but it's an indicator of demand. But if you look at the total volume of searches for things like eye doctor, eye exam, and all of the related terms, myopia management is less than 0.002% of any of those searches, and that's in some of the busiest parts of the country.
Hey, that's less than the atropine dosage that we're talking about here, Eugene.
Right. So,
well on, Tom.
Yeah, I like it. So the problem is, you know, and I think this is where it gets kind of interesting, is that the patient doesn't, to your point, Bree, exactly to your point, is that the patient does not know that this solution exists. Right. So and there is, I think CooperVision is trying to do a little bit of this, but there is very little public awareness education to say, hey, this treatment is available for your kid and this is what it does. So in all reality, what keeps happening is that you rely on the patient, or sorry, you rely on the doctor who has that patient in the chair to do all of the education. So now I kind of go back to the point that both of you just made, which is the messaging in the chair. Before we get to the messaging in the chair, let me ask you both. Is every pediatric patient that comes into a general practice, should they have a myopia, whatever we call it, a myopia eval, a myopia consult, a myopia talk with that patient? Bree, what about you first?
Yeah, I look at everyone, right? So a myopia screening. So it's real quick, guys. It's just an equation that you're trying to figure out with the endpoint. So if you don't have an A scan or a biometer or whatever, right? You've got probably a topographer. If you don't, what are you doing? Please get a topographer. Like, this is so simple, okay? This is not something that's a big investment. So if you have K readings and you have refraction, you can figure it out. Axial length. It's an algebra equation, right? So now you figure out how aggressive you need to be or not aggressive you need to be. I'm not telling you that every patient needs myopia management. That's not what I'm saying. But you got to find those 4, 5, 6-year-olds that are going to be like that case I just talked about, or even end up as a -5, right? So I don't go into the scare tactic or anything like that, but just make this more simple.
So let me ask you, what percentage of, if you see 30 kids this
Yeah.
week, I'm making this up, but let's say your practice saw 30 kids this week. Of those 30 kids, how many of those kids are candidates for a myopia management program?
Out of the 30, I would say a good chunk of them. Again, it's just dependent. You're looking at age, you're looking at parental myopia. They're all on devices. None of them are outside. So I'm always like, go touch grass, bro. Like, get out there. So I would say probably 1 in 2, 50%, or
Okay.
it allows me to see them back if I'm worried. Let's see where you are in 6 months. Like,
Okay.
there's just
Good,
not
good.
enough. There's not enough of that plus in the system that we all are hoping for. It's not there anymore.
Okay, so
I don't know what you're seeing, Tom.
we're going to come back to you with the messaging in the chair momentarily, but I'm going to ask you the same question, Tan.
Yep.
If a typical practice, maybe, again, we talked about how there's not enough patients calling and saying, I want your myopia management services, right? So what you're typically saying is, hey, do you guys see kids for an eye exam? And the answer is, okay, yes, got it. So now you're going to see a kid for an eye exam. If I see 30 kids for an eye exam, whether it's in a week, in a month, whatever, how many of those kids could be candidates for myopia management treatment?
Good question. So in the general wild, you'll probably have 42%. So 42% of people will probably develop myopia in the United States. It'll probably be 50-50 by the time we're in 2050. But today, we'll say it's 42% or so, right? But that's the general population in the general wild. That person, unfortunately, doesn't necessarily call my office and schedule an appointment. The ones that schedule an appointment and call my office over-index with a problem. That's why they showed up. So in my office, it's probably over 60% because they came in with a problem, 60, 70%. But it's almost like the survivor bias of who finally picked up the phone and decided to call me because they failed a school screening. But ballpark, in my heavy index Asian community in Irvine, it's, the vast majority of those guys are going to be like 70-80% of those guys are developing myopia. So we index heavy. We screen every patient with axial length measurements. Anyone under the age of 18, because it's myopia is such a big deal that to me it's important to screen it and to account for it. So we don't dabble. We're all in. High percentage of our practice.
Do you think that most doctors screen every patient or do the calculations, as Brie was saying?
No, absolutely not. So they don't. And so that's the thing, is it going to be your thing? It doesn't have to be your thing. The biggest, by far, the most important sales conversation we have is with the man in the mirror. And the man in the mirror doesn't necessarily believe that he or she needs to treat myopia. And if you can sell that person, you will win. But the problem is that most doctors have not sold that person yet. Because if they did, then they would measure axial length measurement on anyone 18 years old or under. They would have a coin topographer. They would invest. They would dabble. And if they don't, they would do not dabble. And if they are dabbling, they would actually be committed to referring out. But they're not sold on it yet. But when they do, that's when the game is won. We just haven't done a great job yet of doing it.
So you're saying step one is mindset.
Mindset.
Yeah.
Mindset.
Tell yourself that you're going to do this and you're going to go all in.
That's right. Once you do that, it changes everything. It changes your trajectory 1,000%. And that's the number one hurdle.
Yeah, which I think is such a key point, and it's exactly what Brianna was saying, which is that, measure every patient. So at least you've got the data, and then you can, you don't have to sell every patient, but you have to sell it, but you at least know who needs it and who doesn't need it. So I'm just going to ask a numbers question.
Also, Eugene, on that, Eugene, we're big numbers people, right? As scientists. So, if you don't measure it, you can't track it and you can't grow it. So it's anything, your contact lens business, your dry eye business, your marketing dollars. So it's about putting a focus, but I love what Ton said there about the man in the mirror, right? this is a shoulder back moment when you're presenting. So if you don't feel it, your patients are going to sniff you out. And that's where a lot of these no's are coming for. So a lot of this, again, is overcoming those belief systems. Patients can't afford it. They're not asking for it. I don't have the clinic for it. Guys, full on all that.
Yeah.
Because 70% of the patients that you saw, 80% of the patients that you saw this week or seeing today, guess what? They're myopic. Guess what? A lot of them have kids. You already have a myopia clinic. You're just not building it.
By the way, Brianna, that's such a common thing. So at Treehouse Eyes, I go around and I'm trying to, sometimes I talk to prospective doctors to join our network, and they say, "Hey, I don't have any kids." You have no. Do you see any patients aged 25 to 55 that are like mom and dads? Because some of them, not all of them, but some of those people have kids, by the way. So yeah, you're sitting on top of it.
Yeah, and I think you're both establishing a really interesting point. And I think to hammer it home, I'm just going to ask you a number question, then I'm going to ask you how you do it. So we talked about what percentage of the patients could be myopia candidates. So now you speak to 30 myopia candidates. Brianna, for you first. You speak to 30 myopia candidates.
Okay.
How many of those accept treatment in some form for your myopia management program and agree to pay cash money to your practice?
Me, I'm probably at a 98% close rate. And to me, it's really not if they do say no, it's a not right now, and I'll see you in 3 months.
Okay, so we're going to come back to that. That's incredible. That's incredible. And we're going to know how you do it momentarily. Tan, what percent do you think is the right percent for you or your doctors?
Yeah, so in our 70 locations at Treehouse, my target for them is 50%. If they do 50%, I'm happy. For me, it depends on why they came in. If they are referred by another doctor, referred by a friend, 100%. If they are referred by me because I found the problem initially, they've never heard about it before, I'm happy at 60%. So I'm not as good as Brianna because she would get 98% of those too. But for me, it depends on, if it's a Google campaign, they've never heard about it before, I'm early in the funnel, my close rate is not going to be that high. I'm happy with batting 50-50.
Okay. So.
But Eugene, one thing right there that I like to add, okay? So we're trying to recruit for a study. And we've done now 2 studies here. One is 75% of the kids get the drug. The other 25% don't, but it's a 4-year study. If they progress, you can't put them on drug. We are having now the hardest time enrolling because they're like, no, I'll just pay for it.
Okay.
Why not?
So this is where, before I ask you how you do it, let's talk about the modalities in each of your practices. So how are you treating, and what specifically are, what are your most popular modalities for helping kids with myopia? Tan?
So I started initially as an ortho-K guy. So it's kind of been the genesis of my myopia journey. So we heavy index into it. There's a few reasons why. First, the doctors love it. Secondly, we just have a high Asian population. And if you guys understand the Asian population, some of them, especially if they're from China, Vietnam, they come in asking for it. And my spiel when I'm training doctors across the country is there are certain protocols that say XYZ might be better for this scenario based on axial length, growth, and demographics. But at the end of the day, if mom wants something, it's okay to give mom what she wants most of the time. Because if only 3% of kids only get anything at all, I'm happy if the patient's on something. So I don't let perfect be the enemy of good. I usually go with what mom wants. And in my practices, mom usually wants ortho-K a little bit more. We have an interesting model, is that at our locations all across the country, we actually recommend kind of a flat fee model for all of the modalities. Doesn't matter if it's atropine, soft multifocal, or orthokeratology. And so we actually have good data to show that when we give the patients, and we have tens of thousands of patients, when we give that case presentation that way, and we say the price is the same because we're selling an outcome, we're not selling contact lenses or glasses or drops. We're selling an outcome, which is myopia management. similar to orthodontistry, right? So I learned this from Jay Abrahams, like some of the best ideas are in other industries, but you drop it into ours, it's like an atomic bomb. So a lot of the consumer research we've done consumer research. We've also interviewed and networked with orthodontia and their groups and studied their case presentation. So in orthodontia, they don't sell rubber bands and brackets. They're selling an outcome with straight teeth, right? So tangential. But anyways, in our model where we say it's the same price, our goal is to sell myopia management. The patients, interestingly enough, when you remove the factor of price, if it's truly the same, most of them in our network actually opt for orthokeratology when price is level and flat, when you remove that barrier. I think it's because of the coolness factor. It's, freedom. It's going to swim without lenses on. And some patients don't like the pharmaceutical eye drops. So that to me is an interesting finding that we've learned. And especially, and it's true in my practice, even though I bend heavy ortho K, is that the flat feet model, people opt for it anyways. So that's where we started. We would do everything though. We do a lot of my site. We do low atrophy all day long. But that's just my practice because of my demographic, but sell what works,
Okay, that's, by the way, a really interesting insight about when patients are given the choice and the price is not a factor. That's interesting. Bree, what do you think?
Yeah, so we do the full gamut. So low-dose atropine, which I think is really a gateway drug to get into a contact lens option. We do MiSight, we do Ortho-K, but it's really looking at the family unit, deciding what's best for the patient, the family, and the case. So same thing. Our model is a little bit different. For year one, MiSight, Ortho-K are the same. Atropine is a little bit less again, because this is a really long-term treatment. I'm not selling just 1 year of treatment. I'm selling the next 13, 14 years of treatment. And so I think it's, I don't want to do a disservice by overpricing it and getting them out of the thing, right? Because I have a little kid in orthodontia as well. And I love that. You're not selling, brackets and rubber bands, you're selling an outcome. And so you have to paint that picture. That's where things like Optometry has really helped me come in and do that. So when you pick what's right for the patient, pick what's right for the parent and the unit, they're gonna buy into the treatment and they're gonna do it. So you've got some kids that go kicking and screaming in one way. I was just listening actually to a lecture by Maria Liu the other day. She was spicy on that one. It was amazing. So she was talking about the spectacle lenses coming. And I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, just throw spectacles on everybody. I mean, she was like laying into these on how kids aren't wearing them. They're actually developing head tilts because they can't see through them. It's like a -1. They're really not going to wear them. It doesn't give them any freedom. So I think as these things start to get approved, realize you got to do what's best for that patient. That's why I became an optometrist. My optometrist gave me contacts in 3rd grade because one of the girls was like beating me up on the playground with wearing glasses, right? So I still probably need to do some therapy on that one, but you have to advocate, man. So you got to advocate.
So you, in your case, is the price different for each modality?
So my atropine is a little bit lower because they go source it themselves, right? Then my atropine and any soft lenses it's the same. And it's all one program, right? So you don't have to deal with like, okay, I can go to Costco and get these because they're cheaper. Because you're going to come up against that, right? Mm-hmm. So we get nipped that in the butt. So we've kept it really simple for them to opt in.
And in both of your cases, again, I'm going to go into how you sell it momentarily, but in terms of implementation, one of the pieces of feedback I've heard from some optometrists is the reason I don't like to do myopia management is because those patients are really needy. They come back a lot. They have problems. They do, they're difficult to manage. They have a lot of issues, and they're always tying up my phone lines. I've heard this, from some clients, and I'm just curious your thoughts on that. How in your program, because I imagine the program comes with visits, right? If you have any problems, come in, we'll help you, blah, 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 right? Like that's, so the program comes with some number of visits. Bree, how do you deal with that, and what's your perspective on it?
dude, I mean, are you allergic to helping people and making money at this point? It's not computing for me. So the piece to this to remember, yeah, like they are paying you a lot of money. But what I've done, Ton, maybe you've done this now because you've also seen a lot of kids. So I used to be like really religious. So I was like, okay, week one, month one, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, and then we see them every 6 months. Like I'm starting to really push this out. I'm like, I don't need to see you this often because it's working. So I've gone now to like Ortho-K, we see them obviously back at 1 week. There's a call at 1 month just to make sure everything is okay. And then now I'm seeing them every 4 months for that first year. And then really I go to every 6 months. A couple of kids this week, I was like, dude, I'll see you in a year, man. Like you haven't progressed at all in 3 years. Why would I need to even see you back in 6 months? So you'll start to get more confident as you get the right treatment.
Yeah, to chime in, you know, another reason why we do a flat fee model is that one of my favorite sayings is simplicity scales and complexity fails. I went to some doctors that have like, they've got like 7 prices for the Ortho-K program. They're like -1, -3, -4, -2.5. And if they wear a green shirt or a red shirt, it's a different price. And I'm like, hey man, like it can work for you if you've been there for 30 years and serve your staff. But what you don't remember is you've got the curse of knowing because you know what's going on, but maybe your new associate doesn't know and your new staff member doesn't know, and you just introduce so much operational hurdles for you and the patient. So the messaging is confusing for someone picking up the phone. The message is confusing for a new doctor during the consultation and for the staff member taking the handoff. So for us, by having flat fee models, it's easier on the phone call. It's easier to quote fees either or in the exam room. And it's also easy for staff to understand what it's going to be when they talk to the patient. So it's another reason why we decided to do the flat fee model, besides the fact that we're selling outcomes.
But what about the frequency of patient visits?
Yeah, it's because the revenue per patient is so high, the frequency of visits is not a problem because it's covered. So what I like to look at is this. Let's assume that one reason why you can fail is if your price structure is off. Because if something is not economical, you will not do it, right? So as an example is this. Let's assume that you can see 2 patients an hour and sell glasses to them, right? And so like, let's say you sell glasses 50% of the time, you see 2 patients an hour. Let's just ballpark. Let's just say you made $500, okay? On average in primary care. But with myopia, let's say you make $1,000. So let's say that patient with myopia, to ballpark, you sell it for $3,000 and you take 3 hours a year with the patient. Consultation plus all the follow-ups, right? That'd be $1,000 an hour. In that scenario, you're making more revenue per hour than doing primary care. That is check. You'll probably succeed because you price it appropriately. Flip on the other end, you decide to sell a myopia program for $1,500 or $1,000, and still takes you 3 or 4 hours. It might be a push or behind during primary care. What inevitably happens is that if it's a push or behind primary care, you and your staff will unknowingly start to self-sabotage because the economics don't fund the follow-up visits. That's when they become a burden. Like, oh gosh, more follow-up visits. I'm losing money here. You will feel it, and so will your staff. Same thing with taking a bad client. Like let's say Eugene, you have a bad client. You know, the good clients are great. The 20% of them are 80% of your business, right? But some of the other 80%, they just suck up your time. They're constantly emailing you, and they are just hard to work with, and they're actually a loss. But they could be a win if you price it just crazy high. But and then you filter them out. But it's the same thing happens with myopia or any specialty. Pricing can destroy or build a program.
Yeah, I mean, I think you make a really good point, is that price it at a point where you can budget those extra, and you said 4 hours, so maybe that's what it is. So think about, if you divide it by 4, does that pay you well enough to where you can prioritize this particular program?
Exactly. Otherwise, then you don't have a problem with them tying up your phones because they've paid for it.
Yeah.
You're okay.
They're VIPs at this point. They've paid for it. You feel good about it. Yeah, it's back to your mindset, man in the mirror type of point.
Exactly.
And
if you charge $1 million, what's that?
This is like an Aaron Werner quote. He says, anytime that you say it depends on the phone, he goes, depends are for, other problems. It's not for a phone call.
Yep.
So when a myopia management patient calls, yes, you got it on your website, and I live in a transient area, okay? This comes back down to staff training, how people answer the phone, how they're finding you. Guys, our phones, can you please just go back after you listen to this and listen to how your people are answering the phone? I cold call a lot of you guys. So does Eugene. So does Ton. Guys, phone etiquette, man. 101. People are calling you to do business with you, and you're acting like you're doing them a service. Hello, West Broward Eye Care. What do you want? I'm like,
that's when we answer the phone, Bree. That's the 75% of the time when we answer the phone. 25%
oh my God,
of the time
don't get me
as an
started,
industry.
yeah.
Like, don't even get me on that podium, because I am.
Yeah, so
I'll
call an office if I have to transfer a case. And guys, what we're doing again, if you need to transfer a case to another doctor, give them all the parameters. If it's in ortho K, please don't make someone else look good. So I'll call up and I'll search, because we're in Vision by Design or whatever. I'll search that first, but I'll just randomly search a city. Myopia management, right? And I'll pick a place. Top 3 that come up. Hello? Hey, do you guys practice myopia management there? I don't know. Hold on. Does that sound like you practice myopia management?
Yeah. This is where we've looked into, in honesty, the average AI will answer phone calls and deliver a better service than the average person
So much better.
Optometric practice. Yeah. We've looked into AI as well, multiple ones, and we actually considered it, but our staff is actually quite good. Our call answer rate is really high. We've made a call center that's is outside the country though, but they are so good and on top of it, and so. But I'd say for the average practice, AI should be implemented and take all phone calls, like 95% of them, because it would absolutely be better than the current staff that they're having now.
Your music to my ears. That is on the Innovation Podcast coming up in a couple of weeks for everybody. Having said that, when we come back from break, I want to go to the juiciest part of the show, which is you all talking about what the heck it is that you do in the chair to get those incredible conversion rates. We'll be right back on the Power Hour. All right, we're back on the Power Hour, and this is, I think, the most exciting part of the show. We heard some incredible conversion rates, both from Tan and Bree, and I really just want to dig into what the heck, once you've convinced the man in the mirror, Tan, as you've said, that you're all in, you're qualified, you're able to do this, and that your patients need it, as Brianna said, the question becomes, what the heck do you say, and how do you overcome those price objections, and what do you do? So, Tan, I'm going to go to you first, and maybe just start with okay, you've identified a candidate, and let's not make this the easiest type of candidate. This is not a referral. This is someone who maybe came in for some pediatric exam, and you're having this myopia conversation for the first time with the parent, and what do we gotta, let's talk about, let's actually break that conversation down and think about all the different parts of it.
Good. First of all, there's no magic script. There's no magic script. If you think there's a magic script, you're wrong.
Okay, well, let's just shut down the show. I guess we figured.
Yeah. So there's no magic script, except for when Brianna does it, then there is a magic script. But what I obsess about more, if I'm trying to scale this to 100 locations across the country, let's say, is more about the process. So what are we trying to solve, and how do we make a process that solves that issue? We're trying to solve one problem. Mom doesn't really know what's going on. If she's referred by a friend, she knows what's going on. But that's not what happens most of the time, because I'm not trying to just treat, our goal is not to treat 20 patients a month. Our goal is to do 300 a month, right? How do we get there? And so to get there, we need to basically create a process in which we educate the mom. So assume that we're at the top of the funnel. For those who don't understand funnels, basically they're not that educated. They're not that interested in what you're trying to sell, and they don't know what you're going to talk about ahead of the time. They're not a referral or warm lead, like Eugene's mentioning. So he's saying cold lead, out in the wild, they just showed up because they just want a regular eye exam, right? What happens then? So that patient, most likely will not sign up the minute they walk into the exam room. Why? They've never heard about it before, and they need to think about it. And if it costs $4,000, they're going to need to definitely think about it, right? So for that the solution is this. The goal is to make, if the problem that you're trying to solve is the information is new, then the solution is you try to make the solution not new as much as possible. And how you do that is this. First of all, you're going to have better data and collect and have a better conversation at the front end. So to have that better conversation, you might measure axial length, fraction. You take a nice uncorrected acuity to demonstrate a problem, because sometimes the parents don't realize what 20/60 means. And so you have to demonstrate the problem. Because if there's no problem, then no one seeks a solution. So the inconvenience of your solution, which is coming back for more visits and paying you, the problem must be bigger than that. So your goal is to create the problem, to solve the problem of not knowing. And so we do that by, showing axial length measurements. We show that by showing where you are today, and based on our studies, where you'll be in the future, and how that can lead to future problems like myopic maculopathy and retinal detachments. And so that's something that you might say. The problem is that in the fast-flowing exam pace that you have, the first time you see the patient, you might not have time to talk about all that stuff, because you're supposed to see patients every 20 to 30 minutes. So where it falls apart in a regular primary care practice, not in a Brianna Rhue practice, who just got knocked out of the park, but where it falls apart in a regular practice is that they have either too long conversation at the primary care visit, and then the patient's overwhelmed, and then nothing happens because of analysis paralysis. And so the goal, in my opinion, is actually at the primary care exam, the goal is to give a little bit of information and then sell a consult. At the consult, you give a ton of information. And then the goal is between the primary care eye exam and the consult, you're going to drip market tons of information repeatedly over the course of the next week or two. You're going to send in repeated text messages of ideally videos of you or someone else explaining what myopia is, why it's a problem, possible solutions, and what might work for their child. You might email them information. You might give them a brochure, pamphlet, something, right? So you're solving the problem of make it not new. And then when they come back for the follow-up visit, the problem that most doctors have is they are scared of being a used salesman. Patient walks in for a regular eye exam, you're selling $3,000 myopia program. The chief complaint does not match your solution usually. By setting up their myopia consultation and drip marketing them along the way, when they come back for the consult, usually now they say, oh, I'm here to talk about myopia control. Hey, now your solution matches problem. You're more likely to succeed when that's the case. This happens not just with myopia. It could be anything, setting glasses or contacts or whatever it is, scleral lenses, dry eye programs, same thing. The second thing that doctors get wrong in terms of ignoring the magic script is pricing. I'll give you an example. If you price your myopia consult at $500, you better get 100% close rate, because they sign up to pay $500 regardless if they do treatment or not. So you've choked your funnel by pricing, right? So that's the question you want to have. Because we tend to focus clearly on the close rate in the exam room chair, but we missed the close rate over the phone before they even saw you. And so your reception is not good at closing. Either their scripting needs to improve, their conviction needs to improve, and or your pricing model in terms of how you price a consult needs to improve to widen the funnel. So again, these are different factors that we need to do to find out, to improve your overall close rate, not just the artificial one you've made by sometimes having a really high price consult. I'm not saying that's what people do to make their close rate artificially high. I'm saying that is what happens when you need to look holistically at your entire front to end, from your pricing, your cadence of follow-ups, to your scripting, to your education in between. So that's kind of a brief overview. I want to give Brianna time of things that you need to look into.
Yeah, I love that. Great perspective, Ton. I want to dig into some details, but Bri, you go next here.
You gotta go and make things so complicated. Okay, number one, patients, whether it's a contact lens sale, a glasses sale, myopia management, dry eye, selling someone to do their glaucoma drops, right? They're leaving because we are confusing them. Confused patients don't buy. They're not going to remember 10% of what you said. They're going to forget 90% of what you said. So like Ton sells another visit. I ain't got time for that. Ain't nobody got time for that. Okay. So what I do, again, I block my 2 to 4:30 is just for myopia management patients. You do not put a VSP, iMed, visual field on my schedule like I turn into Mama Bear Ferocious. Okay. What I also do is I practice with my door open. Yes, some people will ask me to close it, but as other patients now, guess what? It's a community. They see other kids in there between 2 and 4. They realize that this is now not just their kid having a problem. They've heard me talk about it now to another patient and another patient as they're being worked up. So it's all about priming. And Ton said a really bad word in most of our words is selling, okay? Optometrists don't like to sell. That's okay. I'm providing a solution over sales to a problem that I'm showing that they have. So how they walk in, patient, mom, dad, whatever walks in, typically it's what we call a one-legger. Okay, so if you've not heard me on any other podcast, I'll describe a one-legger, two-legger, okay? You got to have both parents present. And you learn out a lot about family dynamic. How I learned this, my dad was a furniture salesman his whole life. And you're never going to furniture shop the same way either. When a one person from a couple walks in, okay, we call that a one-legger because they can get out of the sale. They got to go talk to their pet fish, their turtle, their significant other to get the okay. Because mom came in thinking they were going to leave with a $150 pair of glasses. And here you're talking about a $2,000 treatment, $3,000 treatment. Okay, very disconnected. If you have both parents present, and I do this, I'm going to get some information. I'm going to put this all together in my myopia calculation. So I'm already priming. I hand them a pamphlet before I even start collecting data. Hey, I want you to just kind of zoom through this really quickly. So I, physically hand off, they take it. There's a connection there. Get your other significant other on the phone. Now I know family dynamic. If they're in ortho K, do I need 2 sets of lenses, one for moms and one for dads? Who's making the decision? So we call that as a two-legger. Because now mom or dad, if they heard everything that you said, if they leave in that moment, how do you think they're going to describe that to the other person? They can't. So now I put them into the little calculator. Hey, what I'm seeing here in Dalton's eyes, there's some things here that concern me. His eye, just like you've seen him grow like a weed over these last couple of years, his feet are growing, his hands are growing, he's growing up 2 inches. Have you seen that? They start nodding, okay? Well, his eye is growing faster than it should. If the mom and dad is myopic, super easy to sell. If they're not, right, I've got to show them why the problem. So the retina is like a fitted bed sheet that we all love to fold, okay? That tissue back there is stretching. There's things we can do now to eliminate that from stretching. So later on in their 40s and 50s, we're not worried about a retinal detachment or a glaucoma or a cataract. But we have to do it now while they're growing. Hey, Dalton, how much time do you spend outside? And they're like, it's crickets. Okay, what I want you to understand here is you got to get comfortable with the silence. Don't overspeak. Let them answer. Most of us interrupt our patients 18 seconds into them describing a problem. So when you get used to the silence, Dalton, how much time are you outside? I don't know, like they look at mom, they look at dad, whatever, like 30 minutes a day. Okay. How much time are you on a device? And they get real quiet. How much time are you on a device? I don't know, like 3-4 hours. So if I looked at your phone right now, it would tell me 3 or 4 hours. I'm like, no. Does that sound like balance to you? Okay, so now they're already bought in. Now I have my axial length measurement. I put that into the calculator and I show them that's what I'm using as Optometry. We give them solutions, again, if they want to pay for it now or over time. Does insurance cover it? No, they don't believe in prophylactic treatment. So now this calculator, their plano, it's projecting them to be a -6. We know what, a picture's worth 1,000 words. And they don't want that to happen. So if they do have to think about it, so now I'm like, okay, are we ready to get started? Number one mistake we all make is we talk. So if I said, okay, Eugene, we're going to get Dalton started here. Treatment starts at $19.99. We can break that over time. Are you ready to go? Count to 8. This is what counting to 8 feels like. Eugene, are you ready to get going?
That is that feels uncomfortable, but you're absolutely right. Like, let them process. Now, and you're doing that, by the way, while you've got the mom in front of you and the dad on the phone.
Yep.
And you're just playing the game to see who speaks first.
Yeah.
By the way, same thing happens with price. Sometimes a staff member or doctor will talk about quote the price, and they'll be like, "It's $2,000." By the way, you're gonna get all this stuff, and by the way, there's a money back guarantee, and you're starting to lose.
Oh yeah, the second that you make, and it's not even in what you say, it's the tonality of apologizing for the price.
Yep.
That automatically creates the, I guess we'll call it the cognitive dissonance between this is valuable and it's not valuable, right? Like this is expensive, but maybe it's not that valuable if they have to apologize for it in their tonality, not even the words that they say. Just the confidence with which you deliver the price, going back to your kind of man in the mirror comment earlier. But okay, so Brianna, back to you. So then they just, say, okay?
Yeah. What else are they going to say? I mean, what they can say, let me take some more information and think about it. That's great. So, and I push on it a little bit. Okay. So they either will do it, or there's a let me think about it, and we'll put another appointment on the book if they need to think about it.
How far out?
So we don't actually also call follow-up visits. Follow-up visits are evaluation visits because follow-up means free. So I call them evaluation visits. So
do you charge for the evaluation visit?
It depends on if I just said it depends.
Yeah. Get the diaper.
If they're really pushing back, I'll say, let's just see where they are in 3 months. And yes, I do charge for that visit. If it's something where I know that they're right there, then, hey, we're going to set you up for your contact lens fitting ortho-K evaluation here in a week. Tamara will get you set up at the front. And what I want you guys to hear on this call, the confidence that Eugene has, the confidence that Ton has, the confidence that I have, it comes because we are all readers. What Ton was talking about, I know exactly what books he's reading. What Eugene's talking about, I can tell you what books he's reading. You can probably, both of you guys know what books I'm reading, right? So Ton was doing a little gap selling in there. Eugene was throwing a little To Sell Is Human in there. Eugene also likes this book, Story Brand 2.0 in there. Mm-hmm. There's some Dan Martell stuff going on in here.
Yep, I heard you doing Dan Martell very quickly. So I kept waiting for one of you guys to say when someone says, I need to think about it, like, that's great, that's so good. So what are you going to think about?
Or if they say, I need to talk to your husband, say, oh, well, what questions would your husband have? And then they say,
do you think your husband would want your kid to get more myopic over the years? Like, is that what you're saying? Right. They would want your kid to have worse vision and possibly horrible side effects?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
What else you're hearing too in this conversation, guys, is reps. We've done the reps.
Yep.
We've done the work. We can spit the data.
Yeah, well, and it's the other part of it, of course, gets reinforced, and this is where the man in the mirror kind of conversation happens, is when you have the happy patients, right? When you have the testimonials, when those kids are like, when the parents are thrilled for their kids, when you're seeing the results, and when you know you've changed lives, and your staff knows they've changed lives, and you get the confidence to do it again because you feel good about it.
Yeah. That's right. And I know that this may sound like it's just myopia, guys. I get it. Like, it's not childhood cancer and it's not all these bad things. And Ton and I are not saying that you treat every kid that they're going to be a -12. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is you give the parents the option. Because if they don't hear it from you and then they come into Ton or my chair, the conversations we have to have now are different that you could have easily had.
So let me ask you this: your money, you both are pretty unapologetic about them, the out-of-pocket treatment costs. Are you?
I didn't go to optometry school for free.
Fair enough. But are you seeing more resistance for high ticket purchases over the course of the last, let's call it 6 or 8 months? We're seeing a bunch of consumer data that showcases that patients are, a little bit more tight-fisted than they were 6 or 8 months ago. Are you seeing that in your chair?
I'm not.
Not yet. We have not. Our practices are up, 20, 30, 40%. But that's because we're growing also on the, how many patients we're getting. We have a good marketing engine and a referral network that we have that's just crushing it. But I'd say the revenue per patient for the closing rate for vision therapy, for instance, as a side example, is down this year than last year. And so there are some things where I feel like there has been some macro. But for the most part, in optometry, one thing that we're great about, and we actually studied this back in 2020 too, when we were afraid about so at Treehouse Eyes, we've got clinics that only do myopia. That's it. So, and Brianna, you mentioned Brianna Rhue. She's one of our offices. She only does myopia at our Treehouse Eyes clinic in Pleasanton, California. There's no other source of revenue. The good news is that what we find with myopia is that it's fairly resistant. The price is inelastic to demand. And even in recession, parents still will pay for their child's vision care and other things that the kids need. They gotta make it work for their kids. And so overall, I feel like our industry is fairly resistant, and it hasn't been too much of a problem over the last 6 months. I think if you're selling commodities though, like you're selling Prada glasses and Gucci frames, I think that pie is taking a hit, but not what we do is we kind of don't do very much of that personally, so it hasn't been a big issue.
Yeah, and Brie, for you as well, right?
Yeah, and I think you just have to make sure that you're keeping everything convenient. So I'm going to do a selfish plug for like things like Dr. Contact Lens and Optify, and you give yourself the chance. So if your capture rate's at 70%, did you graduate optometry school with a 70%? Maybe. Is that a good capture rate? No. Are you doing things to plug the leaky bucket? Are you investing in time with your staff? So again, patients are leaving because we are confusing them.
So let me ask on that front, what are your top 3 tools? And I think you've said a few of them already, Brianna, but I think it would be helpful for people to hear. What are the top 3 things that you use that help you? And by the way, is financing one of them for either of you that help you close more patients? And what does it look like? What have you found that's ultimately helped you reach that next level of success beyond the closing conversation? What is it? Bree, first.
Yeah, mine is definitely offering things like care credit or Sunbit, so you can actually back out of the conversation if they need to, and they need to break it out over time. My favorite things, one is Ocumetra. Full disclosure, I'm on their board. I've been using it now for 6 months. I'm fast at this pitch. The elevator pitch, we like to call it. It's honestly cut off another minute or 2. In the exam lane when you're busy, that's big, right? Because they can actually print out the report. It shows them where they are, where they're headed. And then I even say, okay, you've been in this treatment now for 3 years. Let's do a look back, see where you were. My other favorite tool is my axial length. Hate it or love it, right? I have the DGH scanner, and I also have the Lens Star. Why I love the DGH scanner is I put a magic drop, so I numb the kids, and I can get this on most of my 4-year-olds. But I do it myself because I know what kind of patient I have. So I'm not just looking at the patient data like eye growth or axial length. I'm looking, how are they sitting? How is mom hovering? How is the patient, meaning like the patient sitting in your chair? If I can get that scan, I'm talking contact lenses. I'm not even presenting atropine. So that's my other thing. And again, you have to have the equipment. So we do a topography on everybody. And then your pamphlet. My other favorite thing is we take a Polaroid picture of every single kid, yes, with their consent, but everybody walks by a wall of kids. Eugene, you guys see kids here? Well, yes, we do. Number one referral source.
Nice. That's awesome. That's great. What a good tip. That's awesome. Tan?
Yeah, for me, tools front to back is so mostly at Treehouse Eyes, right? So I'll give an example of some marketing to get them into the chair first, and I'll talk about some sales stuff. So there's this great marketing company called National Strategic Group that Treehouse Eyes uses.
Oh, I've heard of it.
They're fantastic. We use them at all 70 locations to help drive Google ad campaigns, build SEO, get them in that snack pack on Google. And so that's where
I'm writing my check right now, Tan.
That 0.002% ends up being like 20%, So National Strategic Group to organize our practice, because if you show up and you're a nice optometrist to your patients, you will have a $1 million practice. But if you want to get to the $3, $5, $10 million practice, you needed some systems and scale and operational support. And this other group we've used before is called the Power Practice. They've been pretty good with that too. And so the National Strategic Group and Power Practice, instrumental to success at Treehouse Eyes in all of our practices. And in fact, a lot of our clients are Power Practice clients. The next thing is the tools we use similar to Brianna. At Treehouse, we've got, axis length graphs and projections, and we've got QR codes that people scan and it drip markets them videos over time to market and educate the mom and dad about what's going on. And besides that, you got to measure axial length. Don't just dabble.
And then in terms of conversion rate, is there anything that you do as follow-up or as anything that, especially you mentioned, I'm curious because Brianna doesn't do this, but you do, in between the patient leaving for the primary appointment and the patient walking in for their myopia consult, is there anything that you mentioned you guys do some sort of follow-up? Is it a structured tool or anything like that?
Yeah, so Brianna's really good about the scripting, but I'm more of a process guy because I'm actually not in patient care very much. So I'm trying to fix a process at another practice, not even mine. One thing that we recommend highly is the follow-up process post-consult that doesn't close. So let's say you are batting 50%. The other 50%, you can improve it to 60, 70 if you have a kind of a structured follow-up sequence. What we usually recommend is a series of phone calls, probably at least 5 touch points. It goes back to, we've all heard the rule of 7 and other things like that. But some parents just get busy and they actually mean to follow through, but they just need to be nudged and nudged and nudged. What we found is we're big data geeks at Treehouse, is that if they say no, though, eventually they say, you know what? No. What we find is very helpful is even in that situation of no, we've offered hey, just come on back for a freebie axial length check in 3 to 6 months. It's a freebie. So our close rate of that freebie is usually high because it's a freebie. And the vast majority when they come back, I think the last data point was 82%. The ones that show up to that freebie, unfortunately, the patient gets worse. And the close rate is actually quite high when they were initially a no. And so that's been another tool that we've used on the follow-up sequence to help kind of plug up the leaky bucket somewhat.
Interesting. That's great. You guys, we probably could talk about this for another 3 hours. I think our listeners probably prefer if we end the show usually at the hour mark. But I'm going to open it up to the group of listeners. We may continue this conversation. I may collect some questions for the two of you because you guys are just a powerhouse of knowledge. And I had maybe 6 or 7 more questions that I had prepared that I never got a chance to even ask you. So we may do this again. I'm going to turn it over to the audience and say, if you want to get the panel back together, get the band back together, I'm happy to do that. And I'm so grateful for both of your participation. I know your time is super valuable. Thank you for everything that you do. And thank you for sharing your insights, your knowledge, and your genius with the listeners here.
Appreciate the time.